On this edition of Let's Talk Cincy.
I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification,
Celebrating the 40th anniversary of the federal holiday in honor of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
There's so much more to Dr. King than the sound bites that many of us constantly hear.
His youngest daughter talks about the King legacy, and in the year 2026, where do we go from here? From WLWT, this is the Emmy Award-winning show, Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Curtis Fuller, and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. Here's what's coming up on the show today. President Ronald Reagan signed the King Holiday Bill into law in November 1983, and the first federal holiday to honor Dr. King's birthday took place the third Monday in January 1986. Dr. King was actually born on January 15th. The efforts to get the federal holiday honoring Dr. King's birthday began in 1968, first introduced by Representative John Conyers, 4 days after King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Despite passage of the federal holiday, it took longer for all 50 states to adopt the holiday, with strong opposition from Arizona, as one example, which led to boycotts, costing that state millions of dollars in revenue. The final state to officially observe the day as MLK Day was New Hampshire in the year 2000, previously calling it Civil Rights Day. I sat down with Dr. King's youngest daughter, Bernice King, about her father's legacy.
I've always thought about this, and I follow you on the social media, and you mention this often about how people have taken out of context your father's words.
So there's so many times in my life, God will point out, they did it to Jesus. They took my word out of context, and that your father's not greater. So it took me time to get to this place, because I used to get really infuriated when people would take my father out of context, when they would just misuse his words. But then I realized that it happens all the time for us as Christians. It probably happens for other faith traditions. And so what I try to do is to speak what the truth is, or challenge people to study him, or provide context, because sometimes we just kind of extract something he said to fit our personal agenda, but you left out the context. It's the same thing when we preach. A lot of times we do things and we forget the context from which this was written. So that's how I try to handle it. There's so much more to Dr. King than the sound bites that many of us constantly hear, and especially the constant "I have a dream." I appreciate "I have a dream." In fact, we've not said this as a whole. "I have a dream" is the most known speech in the world. Who else's speech do you know that they know in Australia and New Zealand and in Europe and Asia and Africa and South America and North America and even up in Antarctica? Who do you know of that pronounced a speech? Now, they may not know the entire speech, but they are familiar with "I have a dream." And I like the fact that it rallies people. But the purpose is to pull you in, but to study the rest of the man. There's a much more comprehensive king There's a very radical king. There's a king that makes you uneasy and uncomfortable. There's a king that was about to preach America may go to hell the Sunday after he was assassinated. There's so much to read there, so I always encourage people, especially to read Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos, a Community. Because when you read that book, and you have to read it more than once. I mean, my father, not only was he a prolific writer, he read the dictionary growing up, so you have to get the, you gotta start Googling, what word is that? And then I discovered something. Usually, my father will use a word according to the third part of the definition, the other meaning. I'm like, Lord Jesus, I'm serious. And so we have so much more to learn about him. He didn't just fight for racial justice. In fact, he talked about the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. And many people don't know of the work that he did through Operation Breadbasket with the SCLC, which had impact even here in Cincinnati, Cleveland, Atlanta, Chicago, and some other places. Literally, for example, in the city of Atlanta, they, through Operation Breadbasket, if you respect my dollar, you must respect my person. That was the motto. They called on corporations to tell them what is the composition of your employees, particularly the black employees. What is the percentage there? What kind of jobs do they hold? Most of us held the starter jobs, as you know. And so they began to make demands because they were looking at how do we increase not just the income, but the wealth of the black community. People don't know Dr. King was working on that kind of stuff. And if they didn't, they would make those demands, and if the demands were not met, then they would go to the boycott phase. You got to study this stuff. They would go to the boycott phase. So in many instances, they didn't have to get to that point. And in Atlanta, they were able to increase the income in the black community by $25 million a year, which is well up into the hundreds of millions in today's time. That was annually. That's significant. That's the economic work that they began to do. They started building what we would call affordable housing before he was assassinated. They had a whole plan to build out, in my interpretation, just listening to, even on YouTube, there's a speech that he gave, he entitled, Where Do We Go From Here? Different from the book, but some of what's in the book is in the speech, but it's not the same. But in the YouTube speech, it was the address that he gave in 1967 to the SCLC convention in Atlanta, where he outlined all of this stuff. And I'm encouraging you to read it, because as I listened to that speech a few times, I said, wow, they were building an economic infrastructure for the black community. That's why he ain't here. Between the war in Vietnam, where he saw the contradictions and the undermining of the war on poverty, because they were, using money to fight an unjust war that should have been used to deal with the war on poverty, to trying to empower economically the black community, he became a target, the most dangerous Negro leader, they said. and so please, he's not here, but we're here, and he left us with some jewels He left us with things that we can use today. It wasn't just for then. We were talking about it in the back. When you read him, it's like he's right here with us today. It is eerie. And so I'm encouraging people to really study the comprehensive Martin Luther King Jr.
So much is focused on your iconic dad. But I want you to just share with people what family means to you.
Yeah, so family is home. It's that, especially someone like me and now my remaining sibling, Martin. Family is the place where we can just lay back and be ourselves and not have to be on. When I leave the door, I have to be on. And sometimes I forget that. I forget that people see me in a different light when I leave out of that door. And it doesn't mean that I have a contradictory character behind the closed doors, but I can do things with family that I can't always do in the public. I don't have to worry about the words that I say, you know. I don't have to worry about how I look, things of that nature. So when I first think about it beyond that, I think about unconditional love. It's the one place for me where I learned unconditional love, I saw it modeled, and I continue to see it modeled and lived out. You know, in the world we live in today, people love you because of what they can get from you, you know? And if you cross them, if you do something that insults them or whatever, they cut, you know, we cut people in a minute. But family's not that place, even when it gets intense. And it's because I grew up in a family that love is unconditional. You know, I don't love you because you agree with me. I love you first and foremost because you're created in the image and after the likeness of God. And secondly, you know, I love you just because you're a part of the human family. And each person is deserving of being respected in their personhood, the dignity of their personhood. And so for me, that place of unconditional love is very important. It's the place where, you know, those traditions that you hold dear, you know, continue to be kept alive. You know, we come from a family of activists. A lot of people talk about my dad, rightfully so, but he came out of 2 generations of activists. My great-grandfather, Reverend A.D. Williams, was the first head of the NAACP in Atlanta, and back then it was dangerous to be associated with the NAACP. And he also fought for the first black high school that my father and his siblings later attended. It was dangerous to do that back then. My grandfather, Daddy King, Martin Luther King Sr., he was one of the founding board members of Citizens Trust Bank. He helped to fight for the equalization of teacher salaries and the integration of elevators in downtown Atlanta in the courthouse building. Things that we take for granted every day. But these kind of things were happening in my family. So, you know, family is where I learned the importance of serving humanity at home. You know, family was the place where, you know, we shared our trials and our tribulations, and my mother poured into us. It's the place where even though I was born to Martin Luther King Jr., I was 5 when he was assassinated. So I really didn't know my father. But my mother spent a great deal of time talking about him. And so I learned a lot about Martin Luther King Jr. in the household because of what she shared over and over again. She brought those teachings that were not just his teachings, but hers as well, into the household.
think he would be speaking out. He believed in another kind of power to try to keep us all from getting all killed off. And I think his voice would be heard strong and clear.
Martin constantly referred to the human race because Almighty God is no more interested in black supremacy than he is to white supremacy. He believes in the whole universe of being treated equally and dealt with on an equitable basis.
Talking about my mom was just an incredible person who was able to balance so much that so many women do day to day. But she was able to balance the home and balance, you know, the demand on her life as she was not just caring for my father's legacy. And I hate to say it this way, but if you think about it, she helped to establish the largest and the most well-known social change brands in the world. My father is revered all over the world, not just as an icon, but he studied. You know, when I went to the Nobel Museum in 2018, the executive director there told me that they have about 1 million visitors to their website every day, and over 50% are looking for information on Martin Luther King Jr. So I want you to hear that. He said over 50% at the Nobel Museum are looking for information on Martin Luther King Jr. He was a Nobel Peace Prize recipient, but he's more researched than any Nobel recipient in the world. Over 100 nations commemorate his birthday, and he's not a citizen of their nation. That's because my mother really helped to architect this legacy. But while she was architecting it, she was also being a mother. Anytime that I wasn't feeling well, I wasn't doing well, no matter what my mother was doing, Mama was there. She would, even as I became an adult and had my own house, she would come and fix me some soup and come up and down those stairs and make sure her baby was okay. That was family for me.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop.
When we survey the land and consider where we are today as a community, I'm very troubled, like perhaps many of you are. It seems as if we've lost the sense of the village, you know. There was a time when I was growing up, and before that time, we knew our neighbors. Our kids played with each other. We looked out for each other. We shared. There was a bond. And we've lost a sense of that in today's time. We had a foundation, a clear foundation in the church, you know. We lost some of that today as well. And so I'm troubled because one of the things that my father said to us in his last speech, the mountaintop speech, he said to us to stick together going forward. And I think he said that to us because even though he couldn't necessarily describe exactly what would happen, he knew because he told us as well that we would have difficult days ahead. In other words, I think my father foresaw the greater forces that would be coming against us as a people. He talked about oftentimes that it was easy to integrate lunch counters, but now the real difficult work is how do we create genuine equality. And in order to do that, there has to be a greater cohesion amongst our community, a greater coming together. To me, there's a lot of fragmentation. And we do well in crises. We've always done well in crises. We pull together in crises. But we haven't learned how to sustain that sense of cohesion and connection regardless of whether there's crises, and I think that's why we've lost some ground. For instance, when President Obama was elected the first time, I think we got so excited that somebody like us, that looked like us, was in the White House. And we kind of laid back and got into our own little corners of the world and just stayed in our own business, but we were very celebratory for too long. And we didn't realize that we still had work to do, that the freedom struggle never ends. And, you know, my mother said that struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. And what we've seen is these moments that we come together, and now what's coming up against us is so voracious, and it's so intense that I think it's stirring something up in our community to recognize that if we're going to, in the end, survive as a people, we have got to work together, we got to pull together, we got to stay together, we got to stick together, we got to stand together. We got to understand that what affects you affects me.
Well, that does it for the program today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Curtis Fuller. I'll see you next time for another edition of Let's Talk Cincy. Until then, have a good day and a better day tomorrow.